In a cave in Slovenia, archaeologists found a bone with holes in it. A bear's thigh bone, 4 holes, evenly spaced. 60,000 years old, found beside the remains of a Neanderthal hearth. Some researchers call it the oldest musical instrument on Earth. Others call it lunch, chewed up by a hungry hyena. Not a settled fact, not a closed case, not even close to agreed upon. That argument alone tells you something important about this whole topic. We don't actually know much for certain about ancient human sound. No recordings exist, obviously. Sound doesn't fossilize. But evidence of music itself? That part is shockingly solid. Here's the thing that makes this topic so strange to research. We can prove ancient humans made instruments. We can't prove exactly what they sounded like playing them. So today, what did ancient humans actually sound like when they sang? And how do you even begin to answer a question like that? Let's get into it. Stick around for this one. It involves hyenas, mammoth ivory, and caves that sing back. Let's start with the most famous, most argued about object in this entire story. The Divje Babe flute, found in a Slovenian cave in 1995. Made from the femur of a young cave bear. Archaeologist Ivan Turk led the excavation that found it, found right next to a hearth used by Neanderthals tens of thousands of years ago. 4 small holes, evenly spaced along the bone's length. Turk's team argued these holes couldn't have happened by accident. Not randomly placed, not roughly torn, not the kind of damage teeth usually leave. Dating placed the bone at somewhere between 50 and 60,000 years old. If true, that makes it 20,000 years older than any confirmed human-made flute. Made not by us, made by Neanderthals, a completely different species entirely. There's a detail about the discovery site worth knowing before we go further. Divje Babe means witch cave in Slovenian. Not because of any actual witches, just old local folklore about the place. The cave sits roughly 230 meters above a river, the Adrika. Excavators found over 600 separate artifacts across at least 10 distinct layers. 20 separate hearths, each one evidence of repeated Neanderthal habitation over time. This wasn't a one-time visit. People lived in this cave, repeatedly, for generations. Now here's the part of the story most people never hear about. Plenty of scientists looked at the exact same bone and saw something else entirely. Not a flute, not an instrument, not anything made on purpose at all. Their suspect? A hungry hyena, gnawing on a young bear's bone. In 2015, researcher Kajus Diedrich published a detailed study testing exactly that idea. He examined breakage patterns across bones from 15 separate cave sites, comparing the hole shapes to known bite marks left by Ice Age hyenas. His conclusion: the punctures matched hyena teeth, not stone tools at all. Archaeologist April Nowell put it bluntly, most experts now lean toward the hyena explanation. But Turk's team never backed down. They kept publishing rebuttals for years. They pointed to micro-scratches near one hole, consistent with stone tool cuts, replicated the damage experimentally, piercing bare bones with copies of real Mousterian tools. Here's the thing about this fight. Nobody disputes the bone's age or location. Everybody agrees it's from a Neanderthal-era cave, dated correctly, exactly where it was found. The only argument is what actually made those 4 small holes. Here's the thing that makes the hyena theory genuinely hard to dismiss. Hyenas regularly fed on cave bear cubs throughout this exact region and time period. Their bite force is strong enough to puncture young, still soft bone cleanly. Diedrich found nearly identical puncture patterns on bones from completely separate caves. Caves with no evidence of Neanderthal tool use at all, anywhere nearby. If hyenas could make this pattern without any humans involved whatsoever, that seriously weakens the case for the Divje Babe bone being special. So let's set that disputed bone aside and talk about what's actually confirmed. Because confirmed Paleolithic flutes absolutely do exist, no real debate about these. In a cave called Hohle Fels in southern Germany, researchers found a flute carved from the wing bone of a griffin vulture. 5-finger holes, a carefully carved mouthpiece, unmistakably an instrument, dated to approximately 35 to 43,000 years ago. Made by anatomically modern humans, not Neanderthals, us. Nearby, in a cave called Geisenklosterli, researchers found even more. Flutes carved from swan bone, and one carved from solid mammoth ivory. The ivory flute alone would have taken serious skill and serious patience. Carved from a curved tusk, split along the natural grain, hollowed by hand. Then the 2 halves were fitted back together with an airtight seal. Not a quick afternoon project, not a lucky accident, not something thrown together. These flutes sit in the same caves as ancient figurative art. Some of the oldest figurative art ever found anywhere. Music and sculpture showing up together right at the dawn of human creativity. There's also a quieter, third option worth mentioning here. Researchers have found other possible Paleolithic flutes beyond just holy fells. Most are fragmentary, damaged, missing key sections that would confirm their exact design. None carry quite the same level of confirmed, complete evidence as the German finds, which is honestly normal for objects this old, made from organic material. Bone and ivory survive far better than wood, skin, or plant fiber ever could, which means string instruments, drums, and rattles likely existed too. We just can't prove it. Flutes only answer half the question. What about the human voice itself? For that, researchers turned to a strange new field, archaeoacoustics. The study of how ancient spaces actually sounded, not just how they looked. Researcher Igor Reznikov spent years walking through painted caves in France, not looking at the walls first, listening to them, humming, clapping, singing low notes, and tracking exactly where the sound echoed loudest. Then he compared those acoustic hotspots to where the ancient paintings actually were. The overlap was striking, far more than random chance would explain. In cave after cave, the best-sounding spots were also the most heavily painted. Quiet, acoustically dead corners stayed mostly blank. Resonant chambers, the ones that echoed and rang, were covered in imagery. That's not a coincidence easy to wave away. Not once, not twice, not across dozens of sites. This acoustic pattern isn't unique to Paleolithic caves either. Here's the wider context. In Malta, there's a 5,000-year-old underground complex called the Hal Saflieni Hypogeum. One specific room is nicknamed the Oracle Room, for a strange reason. Researchers measured a strong double resonance frequency, right around 70 and 114 hertz. Frequencies sitting comfortably in the range of a deep human bass voice. That's not Paleolithic. That's thousands of years later, a completely different culture entirely. But the same basic instinct shows up again, in a completely unrelated place. Build or find a space and pay attention to the way it sounds. Across cultures, across thousands of years, across completely unrelated parts of the world. Picture it, deep inside a limestone cave tens of thousands of years ago. Sunlight doesn't reach this far, only firelight carried in by hand. A small group moves carefully through narrow passages, deeper than daily life ever requires. This isn't a shelter. Nobody sleeps this far from the entrance. They stop in a wide chamber, one that rings strangely when you speak. Someone hums a low note, just to test it. The note comes back changed, fuller, layered on top of itself. Painted animals already cover the walls here, right where the sound rings loudest. More voices join in. A low, sustained chant, filling the entire chamber. Not performed for an audience, there's no one else down here to hear it. Just sound, bouncing off ancient rock, exactly the way it was meant to. Here's the thing about ancient flutes that makes this whole topic testable. You can actually build a working replica and just play it. Musicologist Drago Kune did exactly that with a careful Divje Babe replica. Even disputed origins didn't stop researchers from testing what the bone could physically do. The replica produced real, controllable notes, not random noise or squeaks. Musician Lubin Dimkarowski went further, performing complex melodies on a reconstruction. Reports describe a tonal range spanning roughly 3.5 octaves. That's a surprisingly wide range for a single hollowed-out animal bone. The Hohlefels flute has been tested too, with similarly playable results. Researchers confirmed it could produce a real pentatonic-style scale, similar to scales used today. Whatever you think about who made the oldest one, the newer ones definitely worked. There's one more wrinkle in the human versus Neanderthal question worth raising, honestly. We've focused on Neanderthal flute evidence as disputed, and modern human flutes as confirmed. But that doesn't necessarily mean Neanderthals lacked music. Just that proof is harder to find. Neanderthal anatomy actually supports the physical capacity for complex vocalization. Studies of their hyoid bone, the small bone supporting the voice box, look remarkably similar to ours in shape and size. Their inner ear structure also appears tuned to a similar range of frequencies as ours, which means the hardware for music may have existed in both species. Regardless of what that one disputed bone actually turns out to be, the Divje Babe argument might end up being less about whether Neanderthals could make music, and more about whether this one specific bone happens to be the proof of it. So why would early humans bother with any of this at all? Music doesn't feed anyone. It doesn't build shelter or fight off predators. Archaeologist Nicholas Conard has a theory worth taking seriously. Music builds something less obvious, but arguably more important: social bonds. A group that sings together, plays together, and chants together coordinates better, trusts each other more, organizes faster, holds together under real pressure. Conard's theory goes further. This may have given modern humans a real edge. An edge specifically over Neanderthals. During the long period both species coexisted. Not a weapon, not a tool, not anything you could hold in your hand. Just the ability to organize larger, more cohesive groups generation after generation. That's a quiet kind of advantage, but over tens of thousands of years, it adds up. There's a behavioral clue worth adding here, beyond just the music theory itself. Modern studies on group singing and rhythmic activity show a measurable effect. Synchronized movement and sound genuinely increase feelings of trust between strangers. Researchers call this effect self-other merging, a sense of blurred personal boundaries. It happens fast, and it happens reliably, across very different cultural groups. If that effect is even partly ancient, it explains a lot about cave chambers. Not random gathering spots, specific tools for binding a group together, fast. Same rule as always, let's not stop at the exciting headline. Reznikov's own methodology has real limits, and he said so himself. Good resonance in a chamber doesn't automatically prove ancient people noticed or used it. Correlation between sound and art placement is striking. It isn't a smoking gun. No written record exists explaining why any specific painting went exactly where it did. The Divje Babe debate, as you already know, remains genuinely unresolved. Not leaning confidently one way, not settled by a clear majority, not closed. Even the confirmed Hohlefels flutes leave real questions about how they were actually used. Ceremony? Entertainment? Communication across distance? Probably some mix of all three. Which is, honestly, the shape science usually takes with anything this old. Did humans ever actually stop doing this? Honestly, not even close. Here's the thing that never really changed across tens of thousands of years. Bone flutes became wooden flutes. Wooden flutes became brass and strings and electronics. Cave chambers became concert halls, churches, and stadiums, all chosen for how they sound. Architects today still study resonance the same way Reznikov studied painted caves, choosing materials and shapes specifically to make music sound better in the room. Not by accident, not as an afterthought, not separate from the design at all. The instinct to gather and make sound together and feel something shift in the room never really left. So what did ancient humans actually sound like when they sang? Here's the honest answer. We genuinely don't know the melody. Not exactly. No recording survived. No notation. No way to play back the actual notes. But we know far more than silence would suggest. We know they carved instruments capable of real, complex melody. We know they chose chambers specifically for how those chambers made sound feel bigger. We know groups gathered generation after generation to make sound together on purpose. Not for an audience, not for profit, not for anything except the moment itself. Just for the feeling of a chamber filling up with sound. Sound that simply wasn't there a second ago. That feeling, whatever it actually sounded like, hasn't gone anywhere in 60,000 years. So next time a song gives you chills in a quiet room, you're feeling something ancient humans were already chasing tens of thousands of years ago. Let me know in the comments. One more number worth carrying with you before this ends. 60,000 years, give or take, since that very first disputed bone. 35,000 for the oldest instrument nobody seriously argues about anymore. Either way, you're looking at a window of time longer than written history itself. Humans, or our closest relatives, have been chasing organized sound for that entire stretch. Through bone, ivory, stone chambers, wood, brass, and now circuits and speakers. The materials kept changing completely. The urge underneath them never really did. Thanks for watching. Subscribe. New video every week.